In Terraform we have this thing called modules. They're going to be a bit of a pain to get a hang of at first, but if you don't learn them, you're not going to really get far in the long term with Terraform. Who am I? My name's Christopher Ryan, and I'm a DevOps engineer with 6 years of experience, and I'm here to help you figure this thing out. So let's get cracking. Guess what? If you've ever written any Terraform in the past, you've already technically written a module. All that code you looked at, it's part of the root module. So we already have a good basis to understand what we're trying to do here with modules. What is a module really then? A module is just a container to buddy up all of these resources that work and get deployed together. Then, when they're buddied up in this little container, we can deploy these units repeatably. And that helps keep your code dry. What does dry mean? Don't repeat yourself. So how do we use a module? Simple, we just use the module keyword and then we give our module a name that makes sense. Then you're ready to open up some curly braces and provide the source keyword. There are many different sources that you can get Terraform modules, but they're really just places that you can download Terraform modules from. What do I mean by download? Well, when you run a Terraform init, Terraform is going to download those modules to a local directory under .terraform/modules. So you're always going to have this local copy to work from. So remember that before you navigate away and get out of the zone. So let's get back to declaring that source. Modules can have a source from a local path, the Terraform registry, Git repos like GitHub, Bitbucket, and other generic Git repos, HTTP URLs, buckets like S3 or GCS, and lastly, modules in package subdirectories. I'm going to go over that last part because it is confusing for people when they see it for the first time. In Terraform source address, when we add a // we tell Terraform, hey, once you downloaded the module, it is actually in a subdirectory in this bucket, Git repo, package, whatever. Keep that in mind when you are reading these source addresses. Each source has its own syntax. I'll link those in the description so you can take a look for your specific use case. For this example though, we'll use the simple local module by providing a directory in which our module lives. Modules also support something called meta arguments, which I've covered in a previous video, which a link should pop up for, but I will also leave in the description. Let's move on to arguments, which could be anything really. It depends on what your module supports. That question will be answered when we get into writing a module. Let's go over the basic building blocks of a module and how it works. Any module needs at least 3 things to be used effectively. Inputs or variables. What information are we giving the module? Resources that make use of those inputs. Outputs. What information do we get back from the module after we've provisioned everything? What does that look like in the general structure of a module? Our minimal example will look like this. How do we define these arguments we mentioned earlier? We can do that in the variable file. We can define a variable like this. Now our module can use the variable by referencing it like this and providing it as that argument we mentioned before. We can now take this variable and plug it into our resources in our main.tf like this. Once this resource is provisioned, we can output information from it using the output file like this. This will then be something we can get from our module once it is applied, and we can access this from our module by using syntax like this. Writing a simple module like this though would be a waste of time. You'll only really want to create a module when you're creating a higher level concept, like a Kubernetes cluster, or an application stack that has multiple resources that work together. Before you get carried away with specifics of your use case with the Terraform module, You just need to remember these things from a high level. Firstly, data comes into our Terraform module by our variables or inputs. When we get that data, we use it to provision resources. Those resources get outputs which we provide as outputs from our Terraform module that the person would or could need in the rest of their Terraform code. It seems really simple, but you need to think about how data flows in and out of the module. It's going to make things a lot easier when you're troubleshooting or writing Terraform modules. Of course, this isn't everything about Terraform modules, and it does get a little bit more complex than this. If you're interested in learning more about these concepts, or if you have anything else you'd like to learn, let me know in the comments. Any engagement you give me is going to help guide me in what I create next. So go out there and smash it, my friends, and until next time.